Well, that was only one site and one test, so it's certainly not scientific, but a lot of times I do base my stuff on these gut feelings from what I see from small tests, and then also looking at other sites and see what they're doing. But basically I stopped recommending those H tags as a technique because I didn't feel confident that it would really help them do it. Sure, if you had a content management system that had headers, then that's great. You should put the keywords in there, put a nice headline, wrap them in the H1, and it makes sense for doing it for just by the W3 specifications and all that stuff. But it's just not a if you can't do it, don't worry about it, basically, is what I found. And as an aside, SEMNE recently this past year did some studies themselves, and they examined a whole bunch of sites, and they sort of came to that same conclusion, which I thought was interesting because they were always big proponents of the header tags. And still, I would take what we read at SEMNE with a grain of salt too, because they jump to some crazy conclusions sometimes with a lot of their tests. And I don't always agree, but since this one agrees with my findings, I'll agree. The other interesting thing about this screenshot, though, if you read it while you're sitting here looking, I mentioned on here, and I thought this was funny. I said we're no longer offering our submittal service that submits your site to 120 search engines. So before I knew about H tags, that those were a boondoggle, I had already discovered that this submitting to 120 search engines was a boondoggle back in 1998. But guess what? Today, 12 years later, tons of SEO websites are still offering these submittal services to 120 search engines, when here in 1998, I was already saying, all right, I'm not going to waste your guys' money. Here's one, search engine submission, professional search engine submission services, because you need a professional for that. And if you do a search right now for search engine optimization, 5 out of the top 10 ranked websites for that phrase offer these submission services. And it was 6 a few weeks ago, the first time I checked, and when I checked the other day, it was 5. But those results are always fluctuating. It could be 7 or 8 now. But so here's the top ones. Bruce Clay, they offer search engine submission services through their lovely tool. And there's Submit a Site and AdMe.com and eVisibility. No, not eVisibility. Sorry, that one's not. AdPro, Customer Magnetism. You sometimes have to find it. It's sort of buried on their site, but it was really funny to look through these sites and see that they're offering this thing 12 years later after I knew it was. And I may have even been a few years before that. This is the kind of stuff that gives us a bad name. And people assume that the top 10 or 20 results in Google are going to be the most authoritative and best sites out there. So it's interesting that Google themselves are perpetuating this bad SEO myth in a way, which surely they're against. What's the next site? There's Google. So let's talk a little bit about Google. Who's responsible for the search results? Ultimately, of course, Google is. It's their job to at least try to show the best sites for the search query at hand. But does that mean they have to police all the results? Are they going to go check every industry to see who's a charlatan out there and say, no, we can't show this site, we can't show that one? They can't do that. If they did try to make editorial decisions, they'd be opened up to 1 million more lawsuits than they already are. Because then they would be making editorial decisions, and they'd be hurting people's livelihood possibly. So they can't do that. But that's why these 1997-like sites can rank, because they're not being policed that way. Or perhaps Google wants people to think that SEO is all about submitting to 120 search engines, because then people won't be trying to actually manipulate their search results. They'll just be wasting time submitting sites. So who knows? Maybe that's it as well. But you see, as I showed you at the start of the talk, with Google's choice of phrases SEO is, they're not fond of SEOs. They're not. They don't think they need SEOs, and they think they can organize the world's information all by themselves. Thank you very much. They may have parties and dances for us, and they even have their webmaster tools, which Jonathan mentioned, which are supposed to be helpful for SEOs, but they don't let any of that stuff fool you. They're just doing the old keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I really, my theory is that the more information we provide to Google, the more they know they can stay on top of what SEOs are doing, and what they're doing to try to subvert their listings and algorithm. So they want all this information. So if you may remember when Google Webmaster Tools was new, it was just called Google Sitemaps, and they said, oh, here you go, SEOs, submit to us all your spammy sites, and we'll take a look. And all the SEOs said, oh, goody, we can get our sites submitted to Google with these sitemaps, and maybe they'll rank better because we have sitemaps. And Google never said they'll rank better, but somehow it was implied to the SEOs. So all these SEOs put all these sitemaps up and submitted them to Google, and suddenly there was all this talk on the forums that all these sites were suddenly missing. All of a sudden they lost all their rankings in Google. Well, what did you do? Well, I don't know, I just submitted a sitemap to Google. And I don't know, maybe this was just another SEO myth, but I seemed to be reading on forums at the time so often this would happen where people would submit their sitemap and their site would be gone. That seemed a little bit odd, and I don't know that could be just a myth, but the fact that I think Google isn't too fond of SEOs, it actually wouldn't surprise me that they were just nuking sites that they thought might be SEO, because who else was using sitemaps at the time? Nobody knew about it but SEOs. So maybe that's a little bit tinfoil hat-ish of me. But I've always, I've always felt like this distance that we were not friends with them. Even though I've never done anything bad or spammy, usually it's the black hat people that feel that way, but I've always felt that way. And then another story about that is, again, this was a long time ago when there was still when Alta Vista was the big kahuna. I had a gift basket site, a client site that was like #1 for gift baskets, and dummy me had to go brag about it on an email discussion list. And I said, I got #1 for gift baskets in Alta Vista, until the next day when it was suddenly gone. And that was like, well, that, okay, it could have been a coincidence, but I know there were people from the search engines on these email discussion lists. I don't think it was a coincidence. They actually used to, back then, to punish you, they would, yank your pages right out of the index, not like, lower your page rank or whatever. You'd be gone. Luckily, it came back within a week or something, luckily for me and my client. I don't think I told the client that I had said something on the list. But I took that to mean basically we don't like SEOs, we don't need your help, and we certainly don't want you bragging about how you game our system. I really think that's what they meant. But it really hit home to me then that we're not the search engine's friend. At least not if they think that we're manipulating their search results, which you don't have to do SEO. But let's face it, that's exactly what many SEOs do. They're trying to subvert Google's and the other search engines' rankings for their own purposes, which of course is to make money. When there's money to be made, it seems that people will do pretty much anything to make it and make lots of it. And the beauty of doing that through Google is it's not even illegal. There's nothing stopping anyone from creating 100 websites and that all sell the same product and hope that Google indexes them, and then sending traffic to them all. Nothing but perhaps the fear that maybe they'll get caught and eventually banned, but in the meantime they can make a lot of money doing it. You know, and very often Google doesn't catch them. Or they don't care. You know, sometimes I don't know. Or the, you know, the person doing this is clever enough to hide their tracks. So what's wrong with doing this then? You know, we're a free market society. Well, you know, I think in many ways it actually makes us less of a free market. If one company is dominating all the search results, you know, if they're taking up a good portion of the listings, 10 or 20 positions, you know, a good portion of those, then the real people who are searching at the search engines are not really getting the choice they think. So, you know, there's a lack of free market there. You know, imagine that you're looking for a limo company in Boston, let's say, and you put in limo Boston, something like that, to Google, and you say, okay, I'm going to call the you know, top 10 results or whatever and see what they can do for me. So you call the first one, you have a nice conversation with the receptionist and get some pricing, and you say, okay, thanks, and you call the next one. Suddenly the same receptionist answers the phone. You're like, and then you call the next one and the same thing, and you call a bunch of them and you keep getting the same one. Well, this is a true story. This happened to my colleague Pauline over there when she was planning her wedding a while back. You know, I mean, that's kind of a creepy experience in ways, and it's kind of sleazy in a way. But you know, hey, it's nice for that company to own all those spots. But it's stifling the competition in a way. They don't care because they're making tons of money, I'm sure. You know, a long time ago, Google and all the search engines, the other search engines did it before Google, they put in something called clustering in the search results so that no more than 2 listings would show for any one company to prevent this sort of thing. Before that, you know, you really could dominate the top 10 listings with one site, but at least people would see they were all the same domain. So that, you know, that's why people are now creating multiple sites to show, to try to dominate the results, because they can't do it with the same site anymore. So, you know, what the limo company is doing is going to be kind of difficult to spot because they had different phone numbers. You know, the sites looked all different. They were different company names. Perhaps they'd even bought a bunch of limo companies that already ranking well just to own them. So, you know, that's going to be tricky for Google to catch. You know, you could probably rat them out, but I don't know if that would help either. Oh, I forgot the limo slide because I'm not doing this with my notes on the screen. So that worked like a. So here's another site. This many years ago, I actually saw this. This was a search for advertising balloons. We used to have a client in this industry, and so if you do a search for advertising balloons, you get this site. Now look at that number. 1-800-791-1445. Then there's another one that showed up in the top 10. Oh, same number, 1445. Totally different, bonanzaballoons.com. And then we've got Arizona balloons. Oh, there it is, 1445, same number. These were all in the top 10 results for this one price. These people are so brazen to use the same phone number even. And a lot of them, I think they even use the same picture on some of these, same pictures on these sites. And there's one more. Look, they even have a giant money bag there to store all the money that they're making because they have 4 listings in the top of Google.